It's a whole new year, 1971, and with another year comes another 4-part story, in which the Doctor and his new companion battle the Autons. You can understand why, as it worked really well the first time round, but it can't help feeling like an inferior copy. Even the Autons aren't as good this time around, with a kind of shiny metallic look that's not nearly as effective as their original appearance. But having said that, the plastic daffodil men are pretty creepy. In fact, the visual effects are altogether pretty disappointing, even when you make allowances for the era. They were obviously experimenting with CSO, but at the moment it still looks pretty bad. Especially the walking troll doll, which is just hideous in more ways than one. Several new cast members join the team here. Roger Delgado as the Master is by far the best, oozing malevolence with his every word and stealing every scene. We have to wait until episode 4 for him to meet Jon Pertwee's Doctor, but when it happens, it's an absolute highlight. Katy Manning as Jo is a bit of a mixed bag so far. In her very first episode, she gets captured and hypnotised by the Master, but she does get the odd moment later on to prove that she's not completely incompetent. And Richard Franklin as Mike Yates doesn't get the opportunity to make too much of an impression, beyond being rather stiff and posh. Unfortunately, this looks to be the beginning of Jon Pertwee's Doctor turning into an arrogant, pompous git, which is how I remember him being, but he showed little signs of that in the previous season. Here, the scene where he upbraids a civil servant by claiming to be in the same club as his boss is absolutely insufferable. You can imagine other Doctors playing the same scene, where they would have made it obvious they were bluffing, but there's no indication of that from this one. Overall, a disappointing start to the season. 5. This feels very much like a Season 7 story, and anyone who's seen my video on that season will know it's very much my kind of thing. It's one of those weird stories where there's no real monsters or aliens around, apart from the Keller machine, which is really just a box, so it's hard to get scared about it, even if it does reflect all your worst fears back at you. In fact, I've got my own Keller machine here. You can pick them up quite cheaply nowadays from like car boot sales and the like. So let's see what happens when I switch it on. What? No, I don't want to get a proper job. I want to keep on making YouTube videos. No! Well, that was embarrassing. In the absence of a proper alien villain, the Master is the main bad guy in this one, and Roger Delgado continues to be very impressive. His plan does seem incredibly complicated though. Over the course of 6 episodes, he goes from using the Keller machine to disrupt the peace conference, to taking over a prison, to stealing a missile. If anything, the whole Keller machine subplot could have been dropped entirely, without losing too much from the story. Unit are particularly impressive in this story. For once they have a whole bunch of different operations going on, and they really feel like a proper military organisation. The scenes of the soldiers fighting in the atmospheric castle location are very well done, and in the final episode there's even a helicopter and a full-size missile to add value. Though all this spending did get the director sacked, which is a shame as he was really very good. Jon Pertwee's Doctor gets to show more of a vulnerable side here. After he's been through the Keller machine, he seems absolutely drained, which is something you rarely see of any Doctor. His relationship with Jo becomes a lot closer here, as she nurses him back to health, but by the end of the story he's back to snapping at the Brigadier for no reason. Overall, it's an entertaining story, packed with incident, and although the alien monster isn't very good, the Master more than makes up for it. 7. Right, now, the Claws of Axos. I'll stop doing that, don't worry. This one has a really good premise, friendly aliens who turn out to be secretly evil, but it's kind of spoiled by revealing their true selves before the end of episode 1. Still, the look of Axos is certainly unique. With its bizarre multicoloured sets and creatures, it's the first story that really feels like it's made for colour television. The monsters look really good as well, all tentacles and bits of flesh poking out, and you can't help wondering what modern visual effects would make of it. Bring the Axons back, I say. The Master is also back, which feels like a bad idea. And at the end of the last story he escaped from Earth, so giving him 1 or 2 stories off would have made his return a lot more surprising. But it's probably his best story yet. From the start he's on the back foot, captured by Axons, and he never really recovers. He's basically a pawn of the Axons or the unit or the Doctor all the way through. His scenes with the Doctor are again a high point, as you can really feel the connection between the two characters. Speaking of the Doctor, his seeming betrayal of Unit to go off with the Master would not have worked with most Doctors, but for this one it does feel plausible, as it's not that far from his usual attitude. Overall, it might not be the best story ever, but I do have a bit of a soft spot for it. 8. After months of earthbound adventures, it's a relief to finally see the TARDIS travel to another planet again. Even if it is just another quarry, it's the first one we've seen in colour, so it feels fresh and new. And the story keeps going at a steady pace for the first few episodes, adding in new elements whenever it threatens to become boring. For the first episode, it's just the colonists, then the miners show up, then the planet's natives turn out to have their own agenda, and then the Master shows up. But at least he was away for a few episodes, so we had a chance to miss him. The ending is really the only weak point. By the time you get to the final 2 episodes, the conflict between colonists and miners has got a bit repetitive, and the whole Doomsday weapon scenario is resolved far too quickly, with the Guardian just agreeing to sacrifice his entire race. If they'd kept it to 4 episodes, it could have been a classic. But sadly it falls short. Katy Manning as Jo has a lot more to do than usual, as she takes her first trip in the TARDIS, and her reaction is very refreshing. She's absolutely terrified, which is probably how most people would react in that situation. With any other Doctor she might not have worked out as a companion, but with Pertwee only leaving Earth occasionally, she seems perfect for him. Of the guest cast, Bernard Kay is probably a standout, as Caldwell, the only one of the IMC miners who isn't a complete thug. Of course the Doctor ends up back on Earth at the end. I would have liked another scene with the Time Lords though. So the Doctor stopped the Master getting his hands on the Doomsday weapon. Perhaps we should revoke his exile on Earth. Yes, but he did commit genocide. Well, maybe not. So after the first 4 episodes, this was heading for an 8. But after the ending, it has to be downgraded to a 6. Another complete change of pace here, from full-on sci-fi to rural folk horror. And it works wonderfully. An English village is the ideal setting for a Doctor Who story, with its limited number of locations and characters, and they've chosen a very picturesque one as well. The theme of science versus magic weaves throughout the story, and it remains unclear exactly how the Master managed to pull off some of his seemingly magical feats, or why he never tries them again. With the Brigadier stuck outside the village, the rest of Unit have a chance to shine. Mike Yates gets to have plenty of good stunt sequences, riding around on his motorbike, while Benton has a kind of semi-love affair with Miss Hawthorne, which brings out a whole new side to his character. The Doctor doesn't meet the Master until the final episode, which is a bit contrived as they're both stuck in the same village, but it does give it a unique feel compared to some of the rest of the stories. And at the end he actually gets captured, so at least he won't be around for the next few stories. Overall, this story is a definite high point of the era. The ending is admittedly a bit of an anticlimax, but apart from that it's flawless. 9. So on the whole it's been a lot less consistent than the previous season, but while it sacrificed some of the quality, it does feel a lot more like proper Doctor Who now, with much more variety between stories, so that definitely bodes well for the future. Speaking of which, I'll be back here with my review of Season 9 in about a month or 2 probably, so subscribe if you don't want to miss that, or check out the description to this video for a link to the playlist of all my Doctor Who videos so far, and hopefully I'll see you soon.